I was watering my philodendron when my daughter-in-law called. After all, you don't do anything anymore. Watch my kids. I'm traveling, Kate said, voice glossy with condescension. I stared at the phone in my kitchen, listening to my own breath and the tremble it carried. When she came back 2 weeks later, the children hid behind me, and the silence was deafening. That was the moment I decided, this ends now. But let me start from the beginning. If you enjoy watching stories like this, then like, subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing stories like this to you. Also tell me in the comments where and what time you are watching my story from because it helps us connect together. My name is Margaret Gardner. 38 years teaching elementary school in Columbus, Ohio, had prepared me for difficult children, unreasonable parents, and impossible situations. Nothing had prepared me for Kate Robinson. That Tuesday afternoon, I was enjoying the quiet rhythm of retirement in my modest home on Maple Street. The kitchen window faced east, catching morning light that warmed the collection of ceramic birds my late husband Edward had given me over our 40 years together. Do you know what it feels like to finally have time to yourself after decades of service? To plan your days around birdsong instead of school bells? The phone rang at 2:17 p.m. I saw Kate's name on the screen and hesitated. In the 5 years since she'd married my son Anthony, every call had been a subtle exercise in diminishment. Margaret, she began, without a greeting. She never called me mom, or even mother-in-law. I'm going to a conference. 2 weeks. I'll drop the kids off in an hour. I'm sorry. My voice came out softer than I intended. Oh, don't play deaf, Kate snapped. I said I'm going to a business conference. I'll drop Chloe, Aiden, and Leo at your place. After all, you don't do anything anymore. Watch my kids while I travel. I felt heat rise from my collar. This woman who had dismissed my birthdays, rolled her eyes at my casseroles, and taught my grandchildren to call my small home, the poor house, was telling me I did nothing. Kate, I need to check my calendar. What calendar? She laughed that sharp, dismissive laugh. What appointments could a retired old woman possibly have? I'll bring them at 4. Don't give them those awful oatmeal cookies. And make sure they finish their homework before screen time. She hung up before I could respond. I placed the phone on the counter and stared at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back had taught scarred little souls to read and belligerent teenagers to remember their better selves. I had whispered to my second graders, use your kind voice, when conflicts arose. I had paid overdue bills with substitute teaching checks and mended pants in the quiet. Kate had married my son and quickly turned our world into an audition for her approval. She wanted designer sneakers and Instagram followers. She called her pitches, business opportunities. I called them schemes. Something settled in me then, not anger, but resolve. The kind that forms silently after years of being sidelined. I picked up my phone again and made a different plan. I boiled water for tea and called Andrew Peters, a lawyer who once volunteered for career day at my school. I asked, in plain terms, what documentation matters if someone tries to fabricate abuse. He was quiet, then thorough. I called Child Protective Services, not to report, but to understand best practices for safety. They connected me to Amber Johnson, who listened like a sister. I bought 2 small voice recorders and labeled a spiral notebook daily log. On my old laptop, I created a password-protected folder. I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Steve Brown, a child psychologist who accepted sliding scale. Decades in the classroom had taught me that preparation is everything. That educators don't just teach subjects. We teach boundaries, consequences, and sometimes, hard lessons. I straightened the blankets in the guest room, where 3 children would sleep. I watered my philodendron one more time. And I waited, quiet and ready, for what would come. The hours before the children arrived felt like preparing for the most important lesson plan of my career. At the kitchen table where I'd graded thousands of spelling tests, I wrote Gardner family, documentation protocol, at the top of a fresh page. I visited the electronics store on Main Street and purchased 2 small voice recorders, one for my pocket, one for the living room bookshelf. The salesman asked if I was recording bird calls. Something like that, I replied, thinking how easily people underestimate women my age. Back home, I labeled a spiral notebook daily log in my teacher's script, the neat, rounded letters I'd used on bulletin boards for decades. Inside, I created sections: behaviors, statements, physical condition, and incidents. 38 years of tracking student progress had taught me the power of consistent documentation. On my laptop, I created a folder named Gardening Tips, innocent enough to anyone glancing over my shoulder, but protected with a password only I knew. Inside went scanned copies of my grandchildren's school records, medical information, and the few family photos Kate had allowed to be taken with me in them. Andrew Peters had been a 5th grader's father 15 years ago, a quiet attorney who'd brought a briefcase of contracts for career day and answered every question with thoughtful precision. Now, sitting across from him in his downtown office, I spoke plainly. If someone were planning to fabricate abuse allegations, what documentation would matter? His pen stopped mid-note. Mrs. Gardner, are we talking about your situation specifically? Just knowledge I need to have, Andrew. He nodded, understanding the teacher who wouldn't elaborate until the student was ready to hear the answer. For 30 minutes, he detailed timestamps, witness statements, video versus audio recordings, and the importance of physical condition documentation. As I left, he handed me his personal cell number. Some battles shouldn't be fought alone, he said. My call to Child Protective Services connected me to Amber Johnson, a woman with a voice like warm honey and the sharp attention of someone who'd seen too much. Mrs. Gardner, I remember you, she said. You taught my nephew Tyler. Changed his life. I hadn't expected that connection, but in Columbus, 38 years of teaching meant your fingerprints were everywhere. I need to understand best practices, I explained, for documenting a child's welfare when accusations might arise. Amber didn't ask why. Instead, she outlined record-keeping protocols, photographic documentation, and the importance of third-party witnesses. Before we hung up, she said, teachers were my first line of defense for vulnerable children. Call me directly if you need anything. My last stop was scheduling an appointment with Dr. Steve Brown, a child psychologist who had spoken at our teacher in-service days. He could see the children next week, he said, sliding scale fees. As evening settled, I sat on my porch swing, the one Edward had hung the summer before cancer took him. The neighborhood was quiet except for the Mendoza children riding bikes in the fading light. I thought of my son, Anthony. He had married Kate 5 years ago after a whirlwind romance. 6 months pregnant with Leo, she'd worn a cream dress that stretched across her middle, her smile dazzling as she looked at my boy. Anthony, with his father's gentle eyes and my stubborn chin, had seemed so proud. How quickly the light in him had dimmed as the years passed. Working double shifts at the manufacturing plant, coming to Sunday dinners less and less, his voice growing quieter on our weekly calls. The last time I'd seen him, Easter dinner, briefly, shadows hung beneath his eyes. When I asked about finances, he changed the subject. When I offered help, Kate interrupted with a story about her latest business venture. The children had been immaculate, silent, watching their mother for cues about how to behave. As darkness fell, I reviewed my preparations. Voice recorders charged. Notebook ready. Laptop updated. Appointments made. The guest room prepared with fresh sheets and the stuffed animals I kept for visits that rarely came. I had taught in classrooms with broken windows during budget cuts, managed 30 children during power outages, and stood between fighting parents at conferences. Nothing had broken me. Prepare for the worst, I whispered to myself, an old teacher's mantra before difficult parent meetings, but create space for better. The battlefield was set. Now I waited for the children to arrive. Friday afternoon brought a sharp knock at my door. No doorbell, just 3 rapid strikes like exclamation points. When I opened it, Kate stood on my porch in oversized sunglasses, scrolling through her phone. Behind her, 3 children waited beside luggage that looked hastily packed. "They've eaten," Kate said without looking up. "Chloe knows their routines. I'll text when I land." Before I could ask about medication schedules, school pickup times, or emergency contacts, she was already clicking down my walkway in heels too high for practical mothering. The rental car pulled away as the children remained frozen on my porch, like mannequins waiting to be arranged. "Well," I said, summoning my brightest classroom voice, "let's get you settled, shall we?" The children filed in with rumpled backpacks and a smell like they'd been sleeping in a car. Chloe, 12 and brittle with practiced sarcasm, surveyed my living room with narrowed eyes. "Dad's too broke to fix anything because Granny takes his money," she announced, dropping her bag on my freshly vacuumed carpet. Her eyes challenged me to correct her. Kate's words in a child's mouth. Aiden, 9, hunched over a battered tablet, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "Do you have Wi-Fi that actually works?" he asked without looking up, voice flat as if expecting disappointment. When I provided the password, he retreated to the corner of my sofa, creating a fortress of technology between us. 5-year-old Leo stood in the entryway, still wearing his coat though the spring afternoon was warm. When I reached to help him, he flinched, a small, instinctive movement, then allowed me to remove it. His arms remained pressed to his sides afterward, as if making himself smaller. I did what 38 years of teaching had prepared me to do, established immediate structure with underlying warmth. "First, a snack," I announced, leading them to the kitchen where I'd prepared apple slices, cheese cubes, and homemade banana bread. "Then we'll unpack, review house guidelines, and plan our weekend." "We're not babies," Chloe muttered, but she ate 3 slices of banana bread when she thought I wasn't looking. That evening, I implemented the classroom management techniques that had served generations of students: clear expectations, consistent consequences, and catch them being good moments. "Shoes by the door," I said. "Screens off at 8 o'clock. Bedtime at 9 o'clock. Homework before television. We help with dishes after meals." "Mom lets us stay up until whenever," Chloe challenged, arms crossed. "How fascinating," I replied with genuine interest rather than sarcasm. "In this house, though, we follow Grandma's schedule." The first night was difficult. Leo cried silently in the bedroom, tears rolling down his cheeks without sound, a skill no 5-year-old should possess. Aiden refused to surrender his tablet at bedtime, clutching it like a lifeline. Chloe stared at the ceiling, ignoring my goodnight. In my daily log, I wrote, Friday, April 12th, children arrived disheveled. Clothing unwashed, photographed. Leo shows signs of anxious attachment, refuses to remove coat, flinches when touched. Aiden displays technology dependency, physical symptoms of withdrawal when tablet removed, shaking hands, rapid breathing. Chloe repeats negative statements about father's finances that seem rehearsed. Each morning, I maintain the same rhythm: breakfast at 7:30, chores by 8:15, outdoor time before lunch. My teacher's instinct told me these children needed predictability more than anything else. By Sunday, the first small fissures appeared in their defenses. Aiden asked if he could help make pancakes, standing on a stool to stir batter while I showed him how to watch for bubbles before flipping. Leo brought me a dandelion from the yard, his first voluntary interaction. Chloe rolled her eyes less frequently. That evening, I read Goodnight Moon to Leo, a book I'd read to thousands of children over the years. His small body gradually relaxed against mine, thumb finding his mouth in what I suspected was a forbidden comfort. After the children were asleep, I recorded the day's observations in my notebook, noting improvements and concerns with the clinical precision I'd once used for student assessments. But my hand trembled slightly as I wrote about the bruise I'd discovered on Aiden's back while swimming, a perfect rectangular shape no typical childhood fall would create. Later, in the quiet of my kitchen, I recorded an audio note: the children show signs of emotional neglect, possibly worse. Chloe guards her siblings like a mother, not a sister. Aiden dissociates when questioned about home. Leo's nightmares mention a bad room. Something is very wrong in my son's house. I was filing this recording in my laptop's protected folder when Chloe appeared in the doorway, her face pale in the blue glow of the screen. "Grandma," she whispered, her defensive shell momentarily cracked. "Mom said if we tell anyone about Uncle Jeremy, they'll take us away from Dad forever." I closed my laptop slowly, keeping my expression neutral despite the alarm bells ringing in my mind. "Who," I asked carefully, "is Uncle Jeremy?" "Uncle Jeremy is Mom's business partner," Chloe said, studying my face to gauge my reaction. "He's not really our uncle. Mom says he's going to make us rich." I kept my expression neutral, the way I had when students confess difficult truths. "I see. And have you met this Uncle Jeremy often?" "He comes to our house when Dad works night shifts," Aiden said from behind Chloe. I hadn't heard him approach. "He brings presents but we can't tell Dad." My recorder captured their whispers as I asked gentle, non-leading questions, a technique I'd learned from school counselors over the years. The children shared fragments. Jeremy had a boat. He took Mom on business trips. He had a big house in Miami where we might live someday. I noted everything in my journal after they returned to bed, adding, possible inappropriate relationship. Children instructed to keep secrets from father. Gifts used as manipulation. The next morning, I established our routine with deliberate normalcy: breakfast, light chores, an educational documentary about ocean life. My classroom management skills served me well. Children thrive on predictability, especially when their worlds feel unstable. Sunday evening, while supervising homework at the dining table, a notification chimed on Chloe's tablet. She instinctively moved to clear it, but not before I glimpsed the image that flashed on screen. "May I see that?" I asked casually. Chloe hesitated, then turned the tablet toward me with reluctance. A photo filled the screen. Kate in a white sundress beside turquoise water, her mouth open in laughter. The man beside her, hand resting on her waist, wore a linen shirt unbuttoned too far. The caption read, "Work hard, play harder. Cheers to my mentor, Jay." Location, Miami Beach. Tagged at Jeremy Haynes _official. "Uncle Jeremy," Chloe muttered. "Mom says he's a family friend." I took a screenshot with my own phone when the children weren't looking. The conference was clearly a romantic getaway. My pen scratched across the notebook later that night, evidence of affair. Miami location confirms children's statements. Mentor, relationship appears false cover. Monday morning, I walked the children to their school bus stop, carefully noting the school's address and teacher names in my log. Leo's kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Patel, approached me with concern. "You're Leo's grandmother?" I'd been trying to reach his parents for weeks about his progress reports and medication schedule. "Medication?" I asked, my stomach tightening. Mrs. Patel's eyes widened. "For his attention difficulties. He should be taking it daily. Hasn't been for at least a month, by his behavior." I added this to my growing documentation. School confirms Leo's medication lapsed. No medication sent with children. No medical information provided for 2-week stay. That afternoon, I called Anthony at work, asking him to visit after the children were asleep. He arrived looking exhausted, shoulders hunched beneath his jacket. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped him with homework 25 years earlier. "Son," I said gently, "is everything all right with your finances?" His eyes remained fixed on his coffee mug. "It's complicated, Mom." Before he could continue, his phone rang. He glanced at it, tension tightening his features. "It's the bank again. I should take this." I watched the color drain from his face as he listened. "I didn't open a card. I didn't buy airline tickets," he said, voice thinner than I'd ever heard it. When he hung up, he looked shell-shocked. "Someone's been opening accounts in my name," he confessed. "Credit cards, loan applications. The bank flagged unusual activity, purchases in Miami, cash advances. Over the next 2 hours, notices arrived in his email, each one forwarded to my laptop as evidence. A cash-out refinance inquiry with my address listed as guarantor property, credit accounts in Anthony's name he'd never applied for, wire transfers to a Florida title company. Most damning, property records for a house purchased under KR Holdings LLC, in Miami, Kate's initials. She's been planning this, Anthony whispered, the realization settling on him. But why use my credit? She has her own money from her family. To control the narrative, I explained, educator instincts analyzing the strategy. If you're financially ruined, who would believe you over her in a dispute? I documented everything, creating a financial timeline alongside my childcare observations. The picture forming was calculated, methodical, Kate siphoning resources while maintaining a perfect exterior. I worried most about Anthony, the defeated slump of his shoulders reminding me of vulnerable students facing overwhelming odds. After he left, I added an observation to my notes. Anthony shows signs of emotional abuse, second-guesses perceptions, apologizes excessively, appears financially controlled despite being primary earner. The house settled into late-night quiet. I was reviewing my documentation when a soft knock came at my bedroom door. Chloe stood in the hallway, tears shining in the low light. She clutched something small and pink in her hand. "Grandma," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Mom told me to delete the photos so Dad doesn't get mad. But I saved some things here." She extended her hand, revealing a USB drive. "Mom says if we tell the truth, Dad will die of sadness and it'll be our fault." I took her face in my hands, the way I had with thousands of children who needed reassurance over the years. "A mother's job is to carry the truth, not bury it," I said softly. "You did the brave thing, Chloe." She placed the small pink drive in my palm. It felt impossibly heavy for something so small, as if all their futures balanced on its plastic frame. The pink USB drive felt warm in my palm, heavy with Chloe's trust. I led her to the kitchen, where I made hot chocolate, my classroom remedy for difficult conversations. As the milk warmed, I asked gentle questions. "How long has your mom been asking you to delete things?" Chloe stared into her mug. "Since Christmas. That's when Uncle Jeremy started coming over more. Mom has a special phone she hides in her craft supplies. She doesn't know I found it." "And what about this USB drive?" "Aiden helped me," she admitted. "He's good with computers. Mom thinks he just plays games, but he knows how to copy files. He said we should have evidence in case." She trailed off. "In case what, sweetheart?" "In case Mom takes us away from Dad." After tucking Chloe back into bed with promises that she'd done the right thing, I sat at my laptop in the kitchen, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I plugged in the USB drive with hands that had guided thousands of pencils over worksheets, had wiped away children's tears, had held other people's futures for decades. The contents loaded, photographs, voice recordings, screenshots of text messages, and a folder labeled simply Plan M. I opened the photographs first. Kate and Jeremy in various locations, his boat, a luxury hotel room, a Miami restaurant. Some were intimate in ways no married woman should be with another man. In some images, airline tickets were visible, dates corresponding with Kate's supposed business trips. The text messages revealed a timeline of deception spanning 18 months. Jeremy, how much longer before we're free? Kate, getting everything in place. By summer. Once the PO is filed, it'll move quickly. Jeremy, the house is almost ready for us. Kate, for US. Not him. Never him. The Plan M folder contains something far more sinister. Inside was a detailed, step-by-step strategy titled Exit Protocol. It outlined, with cold precision. 1. Financial preparation, drain joint accounts, secure separate credit in Anthony's name. purchase Miami property through LLC. 2. Evidence creation, record selected interactions with Anthony, provoke reactions, edit footage. 3. Children preparation, coached statements about father's anger, rehearsed responses for interviews. 4. Legal execution, emergency protective order filing, immediate relocation to Florida, petition for full custody. Attached were scripts, actual scripts, for provoking Anthony into arguments. Notes on when to record, what questions would trigger responses that could be edited to sound threatening. Most disturbing were the video files. One showed Aiden flinching away from someone off camera. The original clip continued to show him laughing afterward, but a second version cut immediately after the flinch, creating a false impression of fear. Another folder contained a staged timetable for a meltdown at my house, designed to paint me as unstable and eliminate me as a supportive presence for Anthony. The final item was an audio recording dated just 2 weeks earlier. Kate's voice, crisp and steady. If anyone asks, say Daddy hit Aiden last month. You don't have to cry if you don't want to, it'll be edited. Remember, this is so we can live in the big house in Miami with the swimming pool. Chloe's voice, small, but Daddy never hit anyone. Kate's response chilled me. Grown-ups sometimes have to create solutions when the truth isn't convenient. I closed the laptop, removed my glasses, and pressed my palms against my eyes. In 38 years of teaching, I'd encountered parents who disappointed me, who failed their children in various ways. Never had I seen such calculated manipulation, such deliberate cruelty. The educator in me maintained objectivity, document, timestamp, create backups. The grandmother in me wanted to scream. Instead, I made 3 copies of the USB contents, one for my protected files, one for Andrew, one hidden in my sewing box. I noted the findings in my log with clinical precision, though my handwriting betrayed my trembling hands. At 2:17 a.m., I made a decision. Anthony needed to see this evidence, but carefully, with support in place. I couldn't risk his reaction endangering the children's welfare or playing into Kate's hands. I sent a text to Dr. Brown, need to schedule emergency session. Family situation critical. Then I sent one to Anthony, need to discuss children's disclosures. Come tomorrow afternoon. Bring nothing. Tell no one. I closed my notebook and went to check on the children. All 3 slept peacefully, Chloe with one arm protectively around Leo, Aiden clutching his tablet even in sleep. I straightened their blankets with the tenderness of both teacher and grandmother. Your truth will be carried, I whispered. I promise. Morning arrived with the weight of what I'd discovered. I moved through breakfast preparations on autopilot, mixing pancake batter, slicing strawberries, setting the table with the cheerful placemats I'd bought for the children. My hands performed these tasks while my mind assembled a strategy. After the school bus departed with Chloe and Aiden, Leo and I played educational games until his afternoon kindergarten. With the house empty, I called Amber Johnson at CPS. I need guidance, I said, keeping my voice steady. For documenting children's statements about potential situations. Her response was immediate. I can be there in 30 minutes. Amber arrived with a small recording device and forms I recognized from my years of mandatory reporting as a teacher. She explained the protocols in her gentle, professional manner. Open-ended questions only. No leading. No reaction that might influence their statements. Document exact words, not interpretations, she advised. And Margaret, prepare yourself. This will be difficult to hear without responding emotionally. When the children returned from school, I established a normal routine, snacks, homework, outdoor play, before Amber spoke with each child individually. I sat in, silent witness to their revelations, my teacher's composure stretched to breaking as they described Kate's coaching, Jeremy's inappropriate comments, and the practice sessions, for what to tell social workers. Mom says when we move to Miami, Dad won't be allowed to visit because of the bad things he did, Aiden explained, eyes fixed on his shoes. But I don't remember him doing bad things. Leo, drawing while he spoke, revealed, "Mommy says I have to tell the doctor that Daddy puts me in the bad room, but we don't have a bad room." Chloe, with 12-year-old perception, said simply, "She's going to take us away and lie about why." Amber recorded everything, her professional demeanor slipping only once, when Leo demonstrated how his mother had taught him to cry on command for videos. "I've documented similar patterns before," she told me afterward, voice low. "This level of coaching and manipulation, it's severe." "Is it enough?" I asked. "To protect them? With the financial evidence and USB contents?" "It's compelling. But we need more professional assessment." Dr. Brown arrived that afternoon, conducting play therapy sessions with Leo and Aiden while having a more structured conversation with Chloe. His findings aligned with Amber's. The children showed signs of emotional manipulation but maintained strong attachment to their father. "They're resilient," he assured me. "Especially with your consistent support. But they need stability soon." When Anthony arrived after the children were asleep, Andrew Peters was already at my kitchen table, legal pad ready. I'd prepared my son with a brief, factual text about the situation, but nothing could have readied him for the evidence itself. We started with the financial documents, then progressed to the photos, text messages, and finally, the Plan M folder. As the full scope of Kate's betrayal unfolded on my laptop screen, I watched my son, my only child, the baby I had raised alone after Edward's death, fold over like a man punched in the stomach. "She was going to take my children," he gasped, the realization hitting him fully. "Make them believe I'd hurt them." When we played the recording of Kate coaching Chloe to lie about abuse, Anthony broke. Deep, heaving sobs shook his body as he collapsed forward, head in his hands. I moved to him instinctively, wrapping my arms around shoulders that had once been small enough to carry. "I trusted her," he repeated. "I worked double shifts for her. I believed every excuse." In my living room, on my rug, my boy wept with the accumulated pain of years of manipulation. After a while, Chloe appeared in the doorway, followed by her brothers. Without a word, they joined our huddle on the floor, a heap of arms and breath and shared hurt. "I'm sorry," Chloe whispered to her father. "We should have told you sooner." Anthony gathered his children close. "No apologies. None of this is your fault." That moment of collective vulnerability became our turning point. Not the evidence itself, but the decision to face the truth together. Andrew outlined our legal strategy while I made tea. We would document everything, prepare for Kate's return, and present her with two options: sign custody and divorce agreements acknowledging her misconduct, or face criminal fraud charges and potential child welfare investigations. "Be prepared," Amber warned before leaving. When manipulators are cornered, they often escalate dramatically. That night, after everyone had gone, Andrew with our documentation copies, Amber with her reports, Dr. Brown with plans to return, I sat alone at my kitchen table. The emotional toll settled on me like a physical weight. For a moment, I allowed myself to feel the exhaustion, fear, and anger I'd been carefully managing. Then I straightened my shoulders, just as I had before facing difficult classroom days. I reviewed my notes one final time, checked the voice recorder's batteries, and prepared for Kate's return. The teacher in me recognized this moment for what it was, the final exam. And we would be ready. Thursday arrived with a stillness that reminded me of the calm before a school performance, children fidgeting backstage, parents filling the auditorium, everyone waiting for the curtain to rise. I woke early, reviewing our strategy once more before preparing a special breakfast for the children. "Will Mom be angry?" Leo asked as I cut his pancakes into bite-sized pieces. "Your job today is just to be honest," I replied, the same advice I'd given to countless students facing difficult situations. "The grown-ups will handle the rest." By noon, our support team was assembled. Andrew sat at my kitchen table, documents arranged in precise order, his briefcase open beside him. Amber positioned herself by the window, clipboard in her lap, professional yet unobtrusive. Dr. Brown waited in the study, ready to support the children. Anthony, pale but resolute, stood by the fireplace, hands steady after days of trembling. At 2:17 p.m., exactly 1 week after her call demanding childcare, Kate's rental car pulled into my driveway. I watched through the curtains as she checked her appearance in the rearview mirror before emerging, sunglasses on despite the cloudy day. She smelled of sun oil and hotel laundry as she swept through my front door without knocking. "Children. Let's go," she announced, all stage voice and bright teeth. "Mommy's back, and wait until you hear about my conference." Her confidence faltered when she registered the assembled adults. First Andrew, whom she didn't recognize. Then Amber, whose CPS badge was visible on her lanyard. Her gaze landed last on Anthony, whose steady eyes held none of the uncertainty she was accustomed to seeing. "What is this?" she demanded, composure slipping. "Before the children leave," Andrew said, voice level, "we need to address some documents." He slid bank statements, title records, and printouts of social posts across the table. I watched Kate's expression shift from confusion to calculation. "We have documented evidence," Andrew continued, "of financial fraud, identity theft, and a coordinated plan to falsify abuse allegations." "Ridiculous," Kate scoffed. "Anthony, what have you been telling them? You know how your mother manipulates you." I reached for the recorder, meeting her eyes directly. "Perhaps you should listen before responding." The first recording played, Kate coaching Chloe about abuse that never happened. The second, her phone call with Uncle Jeremy, where she said, "Once the PO is in place, we fly. He can't follow without a warrant." A familiar strategy emerged in Kate's response, one I'd seen in parents confronted with irrefutable evidence of their child's misconduct. Denial, deflection, attack. "Deepfake," she laughed dismissively. "So desperate. Anyone can edit audio these days." The children had been waiting in the adjacent room with Dr. Brown. Now, with a gentle knock, Chloe entered. At 12, she stood straight-backed, her voice steadier than many adults I'd known. "A mother doesn't call her child a mistake," she said clearly. "A mother doesn't make me lie about Dad." Aiden followed, small and shaking but determined. "I saved the videos on my cloud. They have the originals before Mom cut them to look bad." Leo simply hid behind my skirt, peeking out with solemn eyes that had seen too much. Kate's confidence cracked further. She turned to Anthony, switching tactics. "They've been coached. Your mother has poisoned them against me." Andrew cleared his throat. "We also have testimony from Mr. Jeremy Haynes." He played the separate recording Jeremy had provided to his own attorney after realizing the potential legal consequences of Kate's scheme. His voice filled my kitchen. "Kate, you said it yourself, CPS scares people. Once they show up, Margaret crumbles. We'll film it." In the silence that followed, I watched the calculation behind Kate's eyes, measuring consequences, seeking escape routes, weighing options as the walls closed in. Andrew laid out 2 paths: sign divorce and custody concessions with supervised visitation rights, or face criminal complaints for fraud and attempted kidnapping, plus a civil suit for defamation. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed at Anthony. "You'd never expose our children to a public trial." "That's your choice to make," he replied, voice finding strength. "I'm protecting them either way." For 3 long minutes, Kate stood frozen in my kitchen, the room where she'd once rolled her eyes at my homemade casseroles, where she'd taught the children to mock my modest home. The power had shifted so completely that even she could feel it. She signed the papers with a pen that clicked too loud in the quiet. Each page turned with the finality of a door closing. When finished, she grabbed her designer purse and walked to the door. "This isn't over," she warned, but the threat sounded hollow. She slammed the door as she left. For a moment, the house seemed to exhale. Anthony gathered his children into his arms. Chloe's shoulders dropped. Aiden's breathing steadied. Leo emerged from behind me to join his family. "Is she coming back?" Leo whispered. "Not today," Anthony assured him. And never again without proper supervision. The afternoon light slanted through my windows, catching dust motes that danced in suddenly lighter air. Not victory, too much healing remained for that, but perhaps the first moment of relief. I should have known better than to expect Kate to surrender quietly. 38 years in education had taught me that the most dangerous moment often comes after you think the crisis has passed. Saturday morning arrived with deceptive tranquility. Anthony had taken the children for breakfast, giving me a few hours to organize the documentation for our attorney. I was labeling folders at my dining table when a sharp knock rattled my front door. Through the peephole, I saw Kate standing on my porch. Beside her stood a woman in a blazer holding a leather portfolio, the unmistakable uniform of officialdom. Jeremy hovered behind them, his expression uncomfortable. When I opened the door, Kate's smile was razor-thin. "Mrs. Gardner," the woman began formally, "I'm Sarah Martinez with Child Protective Services. We've received a report concerning the welfare of children in your care. May we come in?" My heart stuttered, but my teacher's instincts took over. Remain calm, assess the situation, protect the children. I stepped aside to allow them entry, noting Kate's triumphant expression as she crossed my threshold. "The children aren't here at the moment," I said evenly. "That's fine. We need to inspect the residence," the woman replied, consulting her papers. "We've received reports of unsafe conditions, inappropriate supervision, and potential fabrication of evidence against a parent." Kate moved through my living room with predatory confidence, phone in hand as if ready to document any infraction. "I've been so worried about my children," she announced loudly. The things they've been saying since staying here, clearly coached. The alleged CPS worker began examining my home, making notes about medication storage, potential hazards, sleeping arrangements. I watched silently, mentally calculating how quickly I could reach my phone to call Amber Johnson. "We'll need to discuss the allegations of parental alienation," the woman continued. "Mrs. Robinson has provided concerning evidence that you've been manipulating the children against her." Jeremy lingered by the door, shifting his weight nervously between feet. His discomfort was palpable, eyes darting between Kate and the supposed inspector. I was about to speak when my front door opened. Amber Johnson stepped in, carrying her own clipboard and wearing her official CPS identification. "Margaret, sorry I'm late for our follow-up," she stopped, taking in the scene with professional assessment. Her eyes narrowed on the woman in the blazer. "I don't believe we've met." Amber Johnson, lead case manager, Franklin County CPS. The silence that followed was absolute. Kate's face froze in mid-satisfaction. "Ms. Robinson," Amber said calmly, "we're already familiar with this household through official channels." She turned to the other woman. "May I see your credentials, please?" The woman hesitated, then produced an ID badge that Amber examined closely before returning it. "This is a district card, not a case worker authorization," Amber noted. "Are you operating in an official capacity today?" Before the woman could respond, I moved to my kitchen counter where my recorder lay. "Perhaps we should review some relevant information," I suggested, pressing play. Kate's voice filled the room. "Once we file the report, they'll have to investigate. Doesn't matter if it's true, the mud sticks. Jeremy, make sure your friend has the right paperwork. We need to get in there and document anything we can use." Jeremy's discomfort visibly intensified. He stepped away from Kate, then pulled out his own phone. "I'm not going to jail for you," he said, voice thin but determined. He played his own recording, Kate explaining the false report strategy in detail, instructing him to find someone who could pose as a CPS worker. Amber checked timestamps, cross-referenced her case file, and looked at Kate with the composed disappointment I'd seen her direct at parents who prioritized vindication over children's welfare. "This visit will be documented as a malicious false report," Amber stated professionally. "Falsifying a CPS investigation is a criminal offense. Furthermore, any contact with the children will now be supervised per the emerging court order." She turned to the woman in the blazer. "I suggest you leave immediately, as impersonating a government official carries significant penalties. Kate looked at Jeremy, then at me, her calculated confidence evaporating. The glossy shell she'd maintained cracked completely, revealing something small and desperate beneath. "You'll regret this," she whispered, but the threat carried no weight. She left without dramatics this time, no door slamming, no final barb. Just the small sound of a person running out of moves. After they departed, Amber placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You handled that perfectly, Margaret." "Will she try again?" I asked. "She might," Amber replied honestly. "But each attempt only strengthens our case." When Anthony returned with the children, I recounted what had happened. Instead of the fear I expected, his expression showed only relief. "It's really over, isn't it?" he asked. "Yes," I said, with the certainty of a teacher who has seen a struggling student finally grasp a difficult concept. "Now we can begin healing." The divorce moved faster than I expected, slow as a sermon in some ways and quick as a strike in others. The judge, a gray-haired woman with eyes that had seen everything, reviewed our evidence and granted temporary full custody to Anthony within weeks. "The system doesn't always protect children," Andrew explained as we left the courthouse. "But when the evidence is this clear, even bureaucracy bends toward justice." The fraud suits trudged through legal channels with the methodical pace of all financial proceedings, but they moved. Kate's family distanced themselves once the full scope of her actions became public. Her Miami dreams dissolved into supervised visitation hours and court-mandated therapy. Spring blossomed into summer in Columbus. In our expanding household, Anthony had moved into my spare bedroom to keep the children stable. We built routines like scaffolding around their healing hearts. Saturday mornings meant pancakes, the kitchen filled with laughter as the children took turns adding chocolate chips or blueberries to the batter. Wednesday became puzzle night, the dining table covered in cardboard pieces that slowly formed cohesive pictures, much like our mending family. Sundays were for church and lazy afternoons with board games on the porch. Dr. Brown continued his weekly sessions, sometimes with individual children, sometimes with all three together. "They're making remarkable progress," he told me after a particularly breakthrough session with Chloe. "Having consistency and truth has allowed them to process their experiences without shame." The children's shoulders dropped lower each week, as if the tension had finally found the floor. The nightmares grew less frequent. Leo stopped flinching at sudden movements. Aiden ventured away from his tablet for longer periods. Chloe's sarcasm softened into genuine humor. On my covered porch, I started The Gardener's Studio, half a dozen easels, jars of brushes, and a handmade sign painted by Leo. Neighborhood children came 3 afternoons a week to paint while I supervised, my teaching instincts finding new outlets in retirement. My grandchildren ran in the summer sun, creating art alongside new friends, their faces unguarded in a way I hadn't seen before. We sold a few pieces at the church craft fair and donated the money to the school library. The quiet pride on Chloe's face when a stranger bought her watercolor of lilacs was worth more than any legal settlement. "You're good at teaching art, Grandma," Aiden observed one afternoon, hands sticky with paint. "Better than Mom was at teaching business." I smiled at his insight. "Teaching isn't just about subjects, Aiden. It's about seeing who people truly are, and helping them see it too." On Mother's Day, nearly a year after Kate's fateful call, the children presented me with breakfast in bed, slightly burnt toast and overly sweet tea that tasted perfect. Afterward, Chloe handed me an envelope with shaky cursive on the front, "For Grandma Gardner." Inside was a notarized letter stating that if anything happened to Anthony, they wanted me as their legal guardian. The formality of it, the adult understanding behind such a document, brought tears to my eyes. Aiden tucked a drawing behind it, me with 3 stick-figure children beside a house with a big green yard. "This is us now," he explained simply. Leo, solemn as a judge, climbed onto my lap. "We choose you, Grandma," he declared, his 5-year-old wisdom cutting straight to the heart of everything. Truth and love over manipulation. That's the lesson I taught for 38 years in classrooms and again in my own kitchen. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my standards. And when the silence finally came, it wasn't the deafening kind that had once filled this house when Kate stormed out. It sounded like safety. It sounded like home.